The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. On today's special edition, Kansas, the World Economic Forum, in our neighborhood. And ladies and gentlemen, no matter where you live, this special edition will be worth your watch. We all have got to be on guard against the World Economic Forum coming into our states and pushing a globalist agenda, which is exactly what they did in the state of Kansas. Ladies and gentlemen, The Right Side with Doug Billings is upon you for a special edition. Are you ready? Let's go.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Hey everybody, my name is General Mike Flynn, and I'm here to do a big shout out for my great friend and one of the best in the business, Mr. Doug Billings. Right Side with Doug Billings, Right Side with Doug Billings. Doug is the future of the airwaves when it comes to independent broadcasters and podcasters. He is the new Rush Limbaugh. He's exactly what America needs right now, looking for honesty, looking for wisdom, looking for truth, looking for patriotism. Listen to Doug Billings at Right Side with Doug Billings. God bless you and God bless America, and thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are winning. We're winning, winning, winning. Welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. Are you ready?
We are not liberal snowflakes who melt away in the face of tragedy, adversity, and challenge. We are a covenant nation under God, and his divine providence is not dead and it's not gone. It is living within each and every one of you. And you will bring it to life in such a way that the world has never seen before. We never back down. We never give up. We march forward.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show today. The Right Side, Doug Billings here with you. Special edition, a special Kansas edition. Now, this applies to everyone in the Republic, because you never know where this kind of thing that I'm going to talk about today pops up. And as always, you know that my show is intended to benefit everyone in America, all who hold conservative values. And today I'm going to tell you about something that took place in Kansas, but it's something that we all need to be aware of, this globalist agenda and a piece of it. So consider it a wake-up call that could change the future, certainly of Kansas, because the event happened there, but also of our republic in general. So, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who have been with me since I started this show back in 2020, and those of you who have come to know me since, you know that I've dedicated the show to shining a light on truth and also on threats to our country, threats to the republic, threats to our freedoms, to our rights, threats to the intent of the founding fathers and the Constitution, and so forth. So I'm going to give some real analysis today. No fluff, no humor, because this is not funny. The facts that you'll hear here today will not be covered in the mainstream media. They will not be covered in the mainstream media in Kansas. They won't touch it. They won't touch this anywhere in the country. Well, they might now because I've brought it up. So there's that. But today I want to talk to you and make you aware of something that's flying under the radar, and it could reshape Kansas quite drastically, and not in the way that we want it to be reshaped. It would, if it happens, would erode our sovereignty, would put our farms and our ranches at risk, the very way of life that we have come to appreciate in the heartland. And I'm approaching this as if many people in America are still not fully awake to the threat that this organization represents, that I'm going to tell you about here, and its founder. Some of you may know friends or family or colleagues, people that you know at church, who are, as we say, still asleep to these kinds of things. I'll tell you in a minute. I extend these people grace, and you should too, please, because we have got to wake them up in a way that doesn't cause them to knee-jerk away from us, but causes them to say, wow, really? I never thought of it that way. Really? Tell me more. That's how we want them to react, and that's how we bring them into the fold, so to speak. That's how we wake them up. So what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is the World Economic Forum, the WEF, and their founder, Klaus Schwab. one of the most evil, diabolical men that you'd ever want to study and research. And his organization, the World Economic Forum, has now infiltrated Kansas. The globalist elites, led by Klaus Schwab himself and his cronies, like that pseudo-spiritual advisor that he has, Yuval Noah Harari, the guy who dreams up dystopian futures for everybody where humans are just data points in some sort of a collective consciousness, transhumanism. I mean, real problems, satanic, anti-Christian. And so they are eyeing Kansas as their personal laboratory. They've got a radical agenda. Kansas is the petri dish, right? And they're tying in the United Nations and some of the schemes that they have invoked lately. It's a double whammy from top down to control of this state and eventually the republic and eventually the world. That's the World Economic Forum agenda. Now, here's the thing. Many people out there still think perhaps the United Nations is a good thing. It's not. This is not a show about the United Nations, but I do want to set the stage. So on October 2nd of this year, in Wichita, the World Economic Outlook Conference took place. Yes, the World Economic Outlook Conference of globalist, DEI, woke, liberal agenda items, and it took place at Wichita State University's Barton School of Business, and it was hosted by their Center for Education and Economic Development and Business Research, okay? Now, I'm going to be polite because the Center for Economic Development and Business Research does some good work on local levels and with local issues of economics. But ladies and gentlemen, inviting the WEF and the affiliated keynote speaker to come down to pitch Kansas as a test zone for globalist experiments, no. So in the strongest, politest terms I can utter, Wichita State, stop it. Stop it. This is a bridge too far. It's like opening up the barn doors so the wolves can come in while the farmers are out in the fields. It's nuts. I respect the Wichita State mission to boost Kansas business, but aligning with these international puppeteers risks selling out our state's soul. And this applies to you wherever you live. Be on the lookout for the WEF. Ladies and gentlemen, especially those of you in Kansas, we need to hold Wichita State's Center for Economic Development and Business Research accountable in a conservative, friendly, polite, but firm manner, and demand that they show us transparency with regards to this agenda. Why are they platforming this kind of stuff? And the star of the show is a guy by the name of Mark Esposito. He's a Harvard professor who's a regular on the World Economic Forum circuit. And the talk that he gave, a very long title, Building a Thriving World for All, Competing in Times of Cognitive Capital, Kansas at the Crossroads. Sounds innocuous, right? But peel back the layers. Peel back the layers, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a blueprint for the World Economic Forum's Great Reset. And if you haven't heard that term, please research it. The World Economic Forum Great Reset. It's an infamous plan by Schwab, Klaus Schwab, not Scott, although the two may be related, up to remake the world after the COVID debacle. It centralizes power in the hands of unelected elites. Sound familiar? It sounds like the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. that President Trump is currently draining. So Esposito straight up quotes Klaus Schwab, tying it to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Wow. That's code, ladies and gentlemen, for their Agenda 2030, which is global control over everything, from your food to your finances and everything in between. Education, yes. How much money you spend, yes. Digital currencies and digital central banks, yes. So we call out Epstein's crazy agendas one by one because this is a bold-faced move towards globalism, masquerading itself as what they call innovation. First of all, he and the Esposito and the World Economic Forum, they paint Kansas as this, and I quote, small enough to experiment, big enough to matter. A laboratory. Kansas, to wield their globalist ideas and experiment with their agendas. Experiment on what? Yes, of course, it begs the question. On our land, on our farms, on our beef, on our wheat, on our people. Esposito raves about turning farms into what they call controlled test zones. Controlled test zones for bio-industry proteins. Let that sink out. And maybe it'll ring a bell. Maybe somebody like Bill Gates will come to mind when you think about that one long enough. Bio-industrial proteins. Think about it. Think about lab-grown meat, ladies and gentlemen. Plant-based alternatives that could wipe out traditional farming and ranching. He talked about at least 5 bioprotein factories in the speech, in the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not progress, not the kind of progress we need. That's a threat to the beef industry. It's a threat to family farms, and it's a threat to the Kansas and American way of life, and nobody's talking about it. Where are the people running for governor? Now, Stacey Rogers. She mentioned it. I saw a social media post. Thank you, Stacey. Members of the elected class, they're not talking about it. Oh, they think they'll ruffle too many feathers. Too many Koch brother issues might arise if they begin to talk about this kind of thing. They might lose donor money if they sound too controversial. The World Economic Forum really wants to ruin farms. I think Billings is crazy. Secondly, there's this energy push that they have, and it's not with our dark, beautiful coal and oil. They call it the renewable heartland. Kansas, the renewable heartland. They make these things sound so pleasant. You know, Kansas is the breadbasket of the world. We are not a petri dish for Klaus Schwab and Noah Yuval Harari and their transhumanist fantasies where food is engineered and controlled by big tech. Thank you very much. But the renewable heartland, the image that they want you to think of with wind farms, solar corridors, and hydrogen pilot plants, it's a green initiative, and it's also a Trojan horse. A Trojan horse for grid instability, higher costs, and while they are all ignoring reliable fossil fuels that keep our economy running. Mark Esposito in the presentation ties all of this to remobilizing globalism. They want to remobilize the globalist agenda, and we have seen it in Kansas time and time again. You have seen it in Missouri. You've seen it in Iowa, Oklahoma. You've seen it everywhere in schools. Kids are tested on an 80% globalist agenda. At least they are in Kansas. The governor of Kansas, whoever this may be, had better start thinking about executive orders to get the Kansas Board of Education under control and take decisions about high school and middle school public school curriculum away from Topeka and give it back to the people in the counties. 80% globalist agendas and 20% reading, writing, math, history, and the arts, etc. So Esposito remobilizing globalization, and he begins to talk about artificial intelligence and data centers. Now, this is a big topic in the world and in America today. Google and Meta, that's Facebook in case you're from Raytown, Missouri, building massive factories. These massive AI and data centers will guzzle water by the multiple millions of gallons. Water for cooling their equipment, even as our farmers are facing restrictions and droughts. Water is a big issue in Kansas. Water is a big issue where you are too. Water for data farms instead of wheat fields. That, ladies and gentlemen, is insanity. I've laid it out. The WEF, their globalist playbook, Mark Esposito and his wild agendas, and the risks to Kansas and American sovereignty, right here in this 18-minute segment. But talk is cheap, so it's time for action, ladies and gentlemen. As conservatives, we cannot just sit here and complain. We've got to mobilize. Here's your call to arms. Pick up the phone, fire off emails, and make your voice heard. Flood these lines. Cause them to crash. Get out there. Talk to these people. Email. Kansas and America is not for sale to the globalist agenda. First of all, start with Wichita State University. Politely but firmly contact the Barton School of Business and Center for Economic Development and Business Research and ask why they're platforming the World Economic Forum. We demand that schools prioritize local interests, not globalist agendas. Call the dean's office, 316-978-3200. Email barton@wichita.edu. While you're at it, reach out to the president of Wichita State University, Rick Mumma, 316-978-3001, or president@wichita.edu. Tell them this kind of event erodes our trust in public education. Next, hit up your Kansas State and wherever you live, your legislators. Find whatever rep and senator, congressman, senator that you have. Call their office. And if you're in Kansas, listen to me. Urge your legislators to enforce House Bill 2204. House Bill 2204 in Kansas. Look it up and have them investigate and have them enforce it. Investigate why the World Economic Forum tied funding to anything that we're doing in Kansas. And don't stop there. Contact our commune socialist governor, Laura Kelly, even though that she's a Democrat, 785-296-3232 and governor@kansas.gov. Play this episode back, pause it, get that information. But enough is enough. We have got to start protecting Kansas farms and families and our way of life. We've got to start talking about this and waking people up. Your neighbors, your friends. And rally with your local Republican groups, your local county GOP chapters. Attend their town halls and so forth and so on. And finally, spread the word, please. Share this episode on social media. Talk about it. Subscribe over on YouTube to this show. The channel is called Welcome to the Right Side. We talk about these kinds of things often. Together, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to stop the nonsense. And together, we're going to wake up the people who want to be part of the elected class so that they start to talk about this. And people who are already in the elected class who are not talking about this are part of the deep state swamp. And they do not deserve your vote to continue to serve in the swamp. This is a big deal. We should all be concerned about the tentacles of the World Economic Forum in the heartland. We're in this together, ladies and gentlemen. Believe it. For the Republic, for Kansas, and for wherever you live. God bless you. Cheers.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.